Do you know what it means to have a revolution? And what it takes to make a solution?
Just want to say thanks to all the viewers on YouTube. I've asked for which countries they're coming from. I'll just read a few that gave us: United States, Germany, Trinidad and Tobago, UK, Turkey, India, New Zealand, Ireland and Jamaica. So there's a big spread there. A few questions.
Compass, indeed, yes.
Yes. A few questions. Maybe first to Melinda. This first one has been covered in sort of, but it could be expanded upon. Is there any active organisation or group for supporting the situation of Guyana now? Is it possible to prevent these imperialistic practices in Guyana?
So, thank you very much. That's a very good question. There's quite a lot going on to, first of all, tell people the truth about the oil, because of course you won't have any resistance until people know the dangers that oil poses for Guyana. There's quite a lot of work to try and undo what I have referred to earlier as the infrastructure of deceit. Then in addition to that, there is litigation going on. So we recently brought a case challenging the Exxon permits, and I was a lawyer on that case along with Sinath Jairam in Trinidad and Pratesh Satram here in Guyana. And we were successful in getting ExxonMobil's permits cut down to 5 years. And the approach taken there, which is the Fair Deal for Guyana campaign, is to make the oil companies and the government obey the laws of Guyana. So it's very much a movement of people that says, look, you've got to obey the laws in country, because that's one of the first things that goes. And to get them to protect the environment for present and future generations. So that's really the Fair Deal movement. And there's a lot more information on the Twitter, which is a Fair Deal for Guyana, a Fair Deal for the Planet. I think there's also a website, and there may be a link to a crowd justice page. So that's really where the information is.
Thank you, Amanda. Next question.
Next question. Maybe Lloyd could answer the same question in relation to Jamaica. Is there any active organisation or group for supporting the situation in Jamaica now? Is it possible to prevent this imperialist practice in Jamaica?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lloyd?
Yes, sorry. Well, as I said before, presently, an environmental movement is developing against the devastating way in which the mining of bauxite is affecting people. So an environmental movement led by the Maroons, and they are supported by others who have an understanding of the damage that the bauxite companies have caused for the people. There is also another issue which has arisen in St. Anne, a place called Discovery Bay, where a company wants to go in there and mine the mountains there as well. And people are saying, no, 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 that is going to destroy the environment, affect our health, and so on. There are hints of corruption where the government is concerned, and so on. So from an environmental point of view, a movement, you could say, is developing. I will say, however, that it still has to deal with other challenges. And one of the challenges is that the bauxite companies, for example, we get the workers to come out on the streets, hold up some placards and say, we need work, so that the people in the cockpit country area back off because we want work. And the same thing with the mining in this particular area. They are able to organize workers and to say back off because we want work. So that becomes problematic in terms of environment versus the workers, especially when unemployment is so high. So, so you have to go the 9 yards. You have to say, well, listen, we need a new economy. We need everybody to have work. We need a land, the crown lands to be distributed, etc. We need to take care of the social needs of the people so that we can take care of the environmental needs of everybody, including workers. So we need a comprehensive response in dealing with those underhanded methods that they are going to try to use to undermine the development of a movement against, bauxite mining and mining period, which destroys the environment and contributes to global warming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further question? One more question, I think, is all we can take.
Okay. Well, we'll get one for Ryan. It's, could you suggest readings for Caribbean thought on federation from below? Do you think the stateless democracies of the Kurds and Zapatistas could inspire a new movement in Caribbean? And are there any groups or movements in the Caribbean heading in such a direction?
Absolutely.
That may be two questions there.
No, of course. I think that, I may also have to defer to Matthew again, because Matthew's been at the helm of a lot of publishing efforts with, I believe, a small Atlanta-based publisher that's collected a lot of these writings that were previously inaccessible, like A.U.C. Kwayana's The Bauxite Strike and the Old Politics, as well as the collected writings of Fundy or Joseph Edwards, who is a labor organizer and refrigerator mechanic in Jamaica. So there's a sort of broad, as what Matthew calls the Caribbean direct democratic tradition. A lot of this still remains out of print. Also just the writings of C.L.R. James, particularly work like Party Politics in the West Indies, which I believe is also out of print, Facing Reality, and other works from, I would say, the latter half of his writerly career are really crucial in this regard. What I will add to this is that, there are isolated organizations, I shouldn't say isolated, there are loosely connected organizations and movements in Trinidad, which is the context I'm most familiar with, that have assembled against extractivism, against the natural gas master plan that has been in place by the government, against the construction of aluminum smelter facilities. And when I was in Trinidad in 2014 and 2015, for the longest period that I lived in Trinidad, I worked closely with a group, the Highway Reroute Movement, that had sort of a controversial reputation based on its ostensible sort of figurehead, Wayne Kubla Singh, and the hunger strikes that he engaged in. But just to say that there are a number of moments at which, under the guise of environmentalism, under the guise of anti-corruption, various civil society assemblages have come together that provide an opportunity to think about a moment of resistance. What I will add to that is that this past summer, the kind of global insurgency that we've seen against the police state is something that we also saw reflected in the Caribbean. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge and recognize whether it happens under a particular organizational umbrella. For instance, the uprisings in Morvant in Trinidad, the uprisings against, or the protests against the police killing of Susan Bogle in Jamaica are really important flashpoints for us to consider, to think about moments of insurgency in which the masses are rising up against the kind of chauvinism of elite state actors that we've been talking about. So I think it's actually quite important for us to think about the intersections of what seem to be parallel movements, the environmental movement, for lack of a better term, and this movement or sort of spontaneous insurgency against the police state. I think that requires sort of a lot of our attention and thought.